Right, so apparently this is live now. So hello, welcome everybody to take two of our what just happened in Serie A. You'll be pleased to know, or you might not be pleased, depending on your persuasion. I'm Dov, and I'm back after a long absence from the Forza Italian Football airwaves. But joining me are two guys who your faces have been used to, or the faces you will have been used to in the past week or so. It's Vieri Capretta and Nicholas Caro. Vieri, you must be delighted after Fiorentina's victory today.
Well, I'm surely very happy. I won't hide. I do support Fiorentina.
Really, your background does not give it away.
And I am very happy. Although there's a bit of sadness because if Fiorentina had played this well the whole season, God knows where we would
be winning the league. And also joining Vieri and myself is Nicholas Caro, who did some amazing mid-season review videos on the YouTube channel. Nicholas, how are you?
I'm very well, thanks, Dov. Happy to be here, but a bit shocked from the result. But hey, I guess it's never a bad day when Juve loses. So.
Oh, no. We can't go down that road. This isn't a Juve hating live Google Hangout.
Inter blood coming out there, sorry.
Oh, terrible. Honestly, these two, I'll keep them in check, people. Don't you worry. Right. Vieri, I'm going to come back to you because, like I mentioned there, Fiorentina will beat Juventus 2-1, Nikola Kalinic and Milan Badel getting the goals, although the second one looked like it was little Chiesa got a wee touch on that, but it didn't. It looked like it did, but it didn't. And then Gonzalo Higuain got what turned out to be a consolation for Juventus. You mentioned kind of when you started there that if Fiorentina had played this well all season, God, who knows what would have happened, but where on earth has this Fiorentina been, Vieri? If they can play this well, why have they not been doing it?
Well, first thing, injuries. And then I think some of the players that have come out tonight weren't meant to be this good. Obviously, I'm thinking of Chiesa, who's become a regular starter. His position was meant to be taken by Christian Tello, who for months was the starting man on the right flank and has been very disappointing. A player that Fiorentina chased for the whole summer. Now you've got Chiesa there. I think man of the match was Carlos Sanchez, who's been fantastic in defense, who's not even really at his position. Obviously, he's a defensive midfielder. He's played sometimes at the back in the past, but he's been fantastic tonight. And there's always been a problem in the defensive trio of Fiorentina. You've got Gonzalo Rodriguez and Astori, who are, two players you can really rely on. And then who do you put on the right? Tomovic has played there. Salcedo has played there. And now, all of a sudden, you find out that you've got a player you've bought to play in the middle who can play very well at the back. So I think partially the injuries Fiorentina has had until now, partially the fact that some players are coming out at this point in time. And right now, they're all in really good form as well, which is starting to make a difference. Whereas I think in September, October, Fiorentina weren't really running as easily as they are now. And obviously tonight, the importance of the game made a difference.
And Nick, who impressed you from the Fiorentina ranks in this one?
I mean, first and foremost, it was very much the whole team was out there to play, which hasn't been there for most of this season. They haven't been playing with much fight or much spirit. So I think Paulo Sousa's definitely done a good job in lifting them and motivating them for the match. As Vieri touched on, I think Sanchez was possibly the standout performer, filling in at the back there. I thought he was fantastic out there. Chiesa keeps outperforming at such a young age. Obviously, he's got that starting spot now, as Vieri mentioned as well. So he's been good. And Bernardeschi still, he seems to be doing well. He's got a rich vein of form at the moment. I think it's 3 goals and 2 assists or something in the last 3 starts, something like that. So he's really starting to show some form again. And obviously there's been a lot of rumours around him and a lot of interest outside of Italy with him. So they were probably my standouts. But then Badelj and Vecino in the midfield, they were did really well, particularly in the first half, to really dominate the game, which was probably the most surprising aspect, that Fiorentina came out and actually dominated that first half. I think it was over 60% possession they finished that first half with, which was it's somewhat unheard of for Juventus to be dominated in the Serie A like that. The only game that was close to that was against Roma earlier in the season.
I'll disagree though, because I think whenever Juventus lost this season, they've deserved to lose. It's happened 4 times, and whenever they dominate or play decently, they won every other game. So against Inter, against Milan, against Genoa, they surely deserve to lose, and the same happened tonight.
Do you think hold on? Do you think that means? What do you think that means for Juventus then? If every time they've deserved to lose, they've lost. Do you think there's something there? Because maybe in the last few seasons they might have deserved to lose and they wouldn't have lost. They'd probably have won the game.
Well, I think what's good this season compared to other seasons is that they've never tied a game. They've always won every other game, or they lost. So if this trend continues, it's not really a problem. You know, they go on the road, they lose in difficult stadiums like the San Siro, like Marassi, like the Artemio Franchi, but then win every other game. They'll probably end up top anyway. The thing is, if they start dropping points in the other games, then it really becomes an issue. And it's true, it's showing that Juventus are maybe more tired, that they're less hungry for success compared to the teams we saw the past season.
Do you think so, Nick? Do you think Juventus aren't maybe as hungry, given they've won the league the last 5 years?
Possibly. It might even be that, I guess even last week in Serie A, they obviously got the result quite easily, but they didn't play the best, so maybe it's just kind of still a bit of a hangover from the Christmas break, possibly, and maybe Fiorentina was the wake-up call that they kind of needed. They definitely haven't been on their game, and as I was going into that, Fiorentina have dominated them, and and that's not a coming to say that Juventus played badly, because Fiorentina very much forced it upon Juventus. So a lot of the credit actually goes to Fiorentina, who put Juve off their game, and you can see that just in their passing success rates, which was down to 70% in the first half, which for Juventus is unheard of. They average up in the high 80s, and that did improve in the second half. But which was down to 70%. Yeah, Fiorentina definitely did come out, and they put Juventus straight under pressure, and that kind of just set the game on its way. And they managed to just hold on at the end, which was always obviously good for the likes of Vieri.
Indeed. Vieri, can you tell the listeners the viewers, I was going to say the watchers there, the viewers, about Federico Chiesa? Because like you mentioned earlier on, he's kind of broke into this team, and I think nobody expected him to do so. I mean, tell us about him. Why is he so good?
Well, obviously he's got it in the blood, because he's Enrico Chiesa's son, who is a big striker, huge name in Serie A at the end of the 90s. Especially for Parma, Sampdoria, and obviously Fiorentina as well. And his son, Federico, he's been brought into the first team in the summer by Paulo Sousa, who clearly has a lot of confidence. This guy can actually become a really good player. Now, obviously, he's been great tonight, but his debut for Fiorentina was at the Juventus Stadium on the 20th of August in the first game of this season. Against Juventus, so huge game, and he started that game. He wasn't, a lot of people thought he was a bit like it looked a lot like when Joshua Brillante made his debut for Fiorentina 2 seasons ago, in a similar way, when Montella played him from the start against Roma at the Olympico, and it was the first game of the season. Chiesa, didn't impress then. Now it's been 4 months, and he's grown into the team. He started playing more and more often, first in the Europa League, taking his chances, scoring in the Europa League, and then finally becoming, I think Sousa at one point just thought, why don't I let him play? Because if Teo and Ilicic aren't delivering, then I'll give this guy a chance. And tonight he was good. And he wasn't just good because he might have scored that goal. He was good because he was a constant threat on the right side. And, that mentality of trying to beat someone like Alexandro. He didn't dribble Alexandro very often, because the Brazilian is a real solid defender as well as a great player. But just the fact to think at that age, he's a class of 1997, to say, you know, I'll try my best. And then, you know, he had a good chance in the first half. He was good defending throughout the game, and then, you know, he tricked Buffon with that little flick. He might have touched the ball. He says, I just read that he says he actually touched the ball. In his celebration, he was saying, no, you know, I didn't. And then the post-game interview, he is adamant that he scored that goal himself. But I mean, either way, Fiorentina find themselves with a good player, with a solid player who could, you know, if he finds consistency, could be a real asset for the following games.
All right, that's fair enough. What would you guys say then about how what the Fiorentina victory means for other teams playing Juventus? Do you think, Nick, that you'll maybe get other teams, the likes of Roma, Napoli, Milan, who they play in a couple of weeks, coming up against Juventus and maybe looking at how Fiorentina managed to stop them in midfield and get behind them in defence, and other teams will maybe take that as a blueprint to maybe try and kind of usurp this team that has been so dominant over the past 4 or 5 years?
I think there's definitely an element of that, and we've seen that this season probably more than the last couple, where teams seem to, you know, irrelevant of form or anything, they seem to lift to this whole new level against Juventus. Whether it's they've kind of figured out how they're playing or how to play against them, what's the effective ways to do it. You know, I guess they've had a few years to kind of try and master that. We saw it probably first with Inter this season in the Derby d'Italia, where, again, Inter weren't in any form, but they just came out a completely different team for that match. Today, Fiorentina, they hadn't won a Serie A match in 3 matches and came out and produced that. So it definitely seems to be that teams are lifting for them, and AC Milan, Genoa, there are other examples. But I guess the real test for these other teams is it's not so much, it's all well and good to go and beat Juventus, but for a Fiorentina example, they've got Chievo, Genoa, Pescara up next. They're matches that Fiorentina, for the goals that they set themselves, they should be winning all 3 of those games. And that's really going to tell their success this season. It's winning those type of games. So, you know, this is fantastic for Fiorentina. And I mean, in terms of a confidence booster, there's not really a better one to get in Serie A. But it's going to mean nothing if they can't produce the goods against those teams. And Fiorentina, they haven't had that consistency this season. So it's going to be a big test for them to see if they can actually go out against a Chievo, against a Genoa, against a Pescara, with all due respect to those teams, but with that same intensity and that same will, and produce the results.
What do you think, Vieri? Do you think this could be maybe a turning point for a few teams and how they face Juve this season or for the rest of the season?
Well, as I said, if Juve don't drop points against the smaller teams, I think, considering they've got a game less and they're still a point ahead of Roma.
No, I'm not thinking about how, but the point is more like, will this affect how other teams play against Juventus? Will other teams have seen this as an indication that
of how to
play against them, how to beat them? It's
clear that the team, I'm thinking especially of Genoa and Fiorentina and maybe Inter. I think the game against AC Milan was slightly different in terms of the games Juve lost. But surely against these guys, they're so superior from a technical point of view to most teams. And also physically, you know, in good shape, the Juve squad as a whole, that you gotta really get stuck in and really attack from the start. High pressing, you know, not every team can deliver some really good high pressing for 90 minutes. There's also the other side, that you also have to know how to suffer and resist when Juve does attack, because Juve will have chances against anybody in this league. And, you know, Fiorentina, it could have ended 2-2 tonight, but I think Fiorentina deserved to win objectively. But if Juve scored another goal, you couldn't have said much. They had their chances. So surely you have to give your everything against Juventus. Otherwise, you've almost already lost.
I think that pretty much says everything. You have to give everything against Juve, or you've lost, pretty much. Right, before we wrap up, obviously this is a bit of a quick one. Where does this leave the title race, Nick? Does this, because Roma, I think they're 1 point behind, but obviously Juventus have that game in hand due to the Supercoppa. Do we have a Scudetto race, or is this just a bit of a fantasy that everybody who watches Serie A would like to be having?
I think it's just kind of giving everyone a bit of tiny hope, but realistically, I can't see it still. As much as I'd love to see a race to the final week of Serie A, I mean, it seems like forever since we've seen that. I just don't think anyone has that consistency that Juventus can produce. And yes, they will. It seems like they will lose these odd games. But I don't think it's, at the end of the day, it's going to affect their ability to win the Scudetto. It's those other games that Vieri was talking about that they always seem to win, and that will take them to a 6th Scudetto, I think, pretty safely.
You go, Vieri.
Yeah, well,
any disagreements?
It's very easy to agree. I think maybe this year, because going back to that point on how hungry they are for victories, obviously they've made a team to win the Champions League. Now, if Juve do go ahead in the Champions League, that's obviously their priority. In that case, maybe they might drop some points. And having said that, we have to hope that teams like Roma continue to deliver like they did today. You know, difficult game against Udinese in a difficult stadium. You scrappy 1-0 win, 3 points. They have to keep on doing that. Otherwise, you know, even if Juve does drop points, nobody's there to take the chance. So maybe the Champions League could be a little variation this season.
That's true.
There we go. Right, well, thanks, guys. It was lovely having you on. Vieri, don't get too high on your hopes because you're away to Chievo next weekend, and you know that's obviously going to be a victory for Chievo. So enjoy this week while it lasts.
Yeah,
Nicholas, Nicholas, cheers as well. Guys, I hope everybody enjoyed that, and we'll be doing a few of these as the season gets to its conclusion. So obviously make sure you like, share and subscribe this video, and go and check the other ones on the YouTube channel as well, because they are fantastic. That's it. So there's nothing else left for me to say other than arrivederci.